Welcome back to Sefaria's training course for educators. I'm Sarah Wachenfeld, Director of Education. In the last lesson, we talked about how to navigate to a text on Sefaria. You can go to any text using the text library button in the upper left-hand corner. You can toggle between Hebrew and English, and select the text that you'd like to read. We also discussed how to follow connections on Sefaria simply by clicking on a text. This time, we'll focus on how to look up an idea or word, or track down a text, when you don't have the exact reference. Sefaria Search is a powerful tool for me as a teacher, as I consider what text to present to my students. For example, let's say that I've decided to teach a unit about slavery. It will be an interdisciplinary unit, as I teach a Talmud class in which the Mishnah and Gemara frequently address the question of when it might be necessary to free a slave. This will tie in with the students learning about Passover and the Exodus from Egypt, while in their American history class they're learning about the Civil War. Sefaria will help me build and share these materials, and I'd like to start by getting a broad perspective on slavery in Jewish texts. So, as I begin preparing this unit, I'll use Sefaria's search bar extensively. The search bar is always in the upper left-hand corner of the screen. First, I might use it to open specific text that I know that I'll be using. The Mishnah that I'm teaching this year is in Gittin. If I type Mishnah Gittin into the search bar, Sefaria will pull up the text for me. And you can see that I have a few different variant spellings of the name. I can select any one of those, and Sefaria will open up the Mishnah for me. Then, I can use the table of contents page to select the specific chapter that I want and scroll through the Mishnayot. Once I know the exact Mishnah, I can type it in and navigate there without going through the library. So, for example, I might type in Mishnah Gittin, Chapter 4, Mishnah 5. Hit Enter, and Sefaria will take me directly to the Mishnah itself. Alternatively, I might know that slavery shows up in the book of Exodus, and I decide that I'd like to open up that book and scan through. Typing Exodus into Sefaria's search bar gives you different options for how to spell Exodus, as well as different texts. In this case, I'm looking for the book of Exodus, Sefer Shmot, and so I'll click on Exodus. If I want to search for the idea of an Exodus, then I would click Search for Exodus in quotes, but in this case, I'm actually looking for Sefer Shmot, and so I'll click on it, and then I can scroll through the book, selecting whichever chapter I like, and that might help me find references to slavery. What I love about Sefaria's search capabilities is that this is also a great way to have students do some of their own research. My students don't always have the capacity to read huge quantities of text, and depending on the setting, they might be better off in English, or I might feel strongly that they should read the text in Hebrew. And of course, we can always control text language with the Aleph A button at the top of the screen. Either way, students can use the Sefaria search bar to find texts. As I mentioned in the last lesson, it's just like Google. Some of the search results won't be interesting or understandable to them, and that's fine. They can ignore whatever doesn't fit. The ability to find information online and filter out what isn't helpful is an important skill. And on Sefaria, students can literally filter so that they can find the text that they want to use by utilizing our search tools. So perhaps I want my students to search for texts about slavery. My students can't read every kind of source, but they have some familiarity with Tanakh, and I'd like them to get some background. So I might ask my students to search Sefaria for the word slavery. They can type it into the search bar, click Enter, and Sefaria will tell them that there are 429 texts that reference slavery. That's too many for them to handle, so I'll instruct them to use the Filter button to filter out only those texts that are in Tanakh. Click on the square next to the word Tanakh, and Sefaria will select just those texts. And if I wish, I could further filter this by unclicking any one of these boxes, so that I'm looking at text, let's say, just from the book of Exodus, or just from a certain number of books, and then I get it down to 18 texts. Clicking on any one of these search results will open the full text, and then the learning can begin. Searches on Sefaria will also produce sheets that contain that term. In this case, when I search for slavery, Sefaria knows about 218 sheets in which the term slavery appears. I can click on 218 sheets, and instead of showing me the text results, Sefaria will show me the 218 sheets that use the word slavery. If I'm looking for inspiration as I prepare this class, or if I'm interested in showing my students different dimensions of this topic as current educators are thinking about it, I can click on that Sheets button and browse through the sheets. Each one of these sheets is a resource that can be freely reused or adapted, just like all of the texts in our library. Click on a person's name to find out more about them. You'll get to their profile page, just as you made a profile page last week. Alternatively, you can go right to clicking on the title of the sheet, and you can see if this is a sheet that you might like to use or reuse or adapt in your class. We'll talk more about how to adapt a sheet when we discuss source sheets in the coming lessons. The rest of this lesson will guide you through more tips and tricks of searching on Sefaria. Enjoy, and be sure to reach out if you have any questions. Contact information is included in the sheet, and we're always happy to receive your feedback.